So the Big East, look, Dan Hurley, he was on the bubble there for a second about a month ago when they lost at Seton Hall. I was like, oh, boy, what is happening to UConn? But now we have the Big East tournament starting off. Butler against Providence, DePaul against Georgetown, Seton Hall against Villanova. DePaul was a team that I have adopted this season. My brother had a bachelor party in Chicago, and literally our Airbnb was right across the street from the campus center, the student center of DePaul. And I'm like, this place is sick. I'm a DePaul fan. I like Chris Holtman. Skogman transferred from Davidson to DePaul, so I had some reasons to watch. What are you looking for in the first round of this tournament with the Big East?
To start off, Xavier deserves to be in the tournament. Forgot to hear this Ohio State bullshit. Like, give me Xavier. They've won 7 in a row. They're really good. They've got a couple of non-con wins. So that's one thing. In terms of day one, I would love to see my Friars take down Butler. I think they will. I think they're just so much more athletic, and Butler is just limited. And Providence, I don't know. I feel like they've just been playing better, just with more fight at the end of the season. DePaul just beat Georgetown. They can mess around and win that game. I don't have a lot of thoughts there. What I'm looking at is, can Villanova, how much do they care about Kyle Neptune? How bought in is Eric Dixon to finish out the season? Because they played UConn well. They beat UConn at home, and they were up and blew it at UConn. Scored like 6 points in the last 10 minutes of that game. I think Nova UConn could be a sneaky upset spot. And I'm saying this, but I also have really good things to say about UConn. I think UConn could win the tournament, but Nova over UConn is the day one upset that I would be on the lookout for.
That is honestly, you took my take right here, Christian. I have dark horses Villanova because I was like, I have in my notes Kyle Neptune may be out of a job, but if Nova gets bounced early, like against Seton Hall, if they get upset, he's gone for sure. But if they beat Seton Hall, they play UConn, like you said, Eric Dixon leads the nation in scoring, 23.6 points per game on 47, 43, 83 splits. And March is all about individual moments taking over, individual players taking over games. And UConn has been notorious all year of playing defense. Like, they just cannot guard. That's been their problem the whole year, it seems like. So you get the nation's leading scorer against UConn for round 3. They split the first 2. And like you said, Villanova had the second one won, and they just stopped scoring. And I think Dixon could pull off that upset, and then they obviously would go into the semifinals against Creighton, and maybe they still get hot. I don't know how high you are on Creighton, but I just think the Villanova pick's a great pick because I really like Eric Dixon and what he can do individually to take over a moment of a game. And I think Villanova could sneakily do that against UConn in the second round.
For sure. And underrated that. So last year, I loved what Nova did in the portal. Like, I thought Tyler Burton was so good at Richmond. TJ Bamba, I thought Mark Armstrong was going to take a leak. Justin Moore was coming back. Like, you had Housen the shooter. You had Hakeem Hart from Maryland. Like, I'm like, this is a good team. And then I watched them play in person at UConn, or when they hosted UConn at Wells Fargo, which was sick. And they lost that game by 1, but they were just so frustrating offensively. Defensively, they were great. They were 13th in the nation last year. This year, it's been a different story. They're the second best three-point shooting team in the country. Like, they went out and got Wigga Poplar. Like, Jameer Brickus is shooting 47% from deep. Eric Dixon obviously can shoot the ball, but like, Dixon is surrounded pretty well. It's not a super talented group, but like, offensively, that part of coaching, and I think that's to do. They brought in I think it's Jamie Young, who was an NBA guy, and he came in and has helped that offense. But they're a half-court team. They're 355th in pace, and like, in a half-court game against UConn, they're right there, And same with Creighton. I think Creighton is a team that I was a little lukewarm on, just because I wasn't big on Pop Isaacs. I didn't know what the fit was. I was wrong. He was hooping. He goes down. Stephen Ashworth really steps up. Jemiah Neal really steps up. And then, like, McAndrew, the freshman, is a knockdown shooter. Creighton has what I like about teams is teams that know exactly how they want to attack and how they want to play on both ends. And Creighton is one of those teams. They know how they want to be. If Creighton loses to you, it's because you were hitting some tough twos, right? Like you were able to. Like, Cal Corner's never getting in foul trouble. He's so disciplined. You're gonna have to score over the top of him. And on the other end, you need to defend the 3-point line and not let them get wide open looks, because if they're getting open looks and they're shooting the ball well, and as good as Cal Corner is on both ends, like, Creighton will beat you. And I think Greg McDermott's one of the best coaches in the country. Connecting this all, I think Nova, UConn, Creighton, it could really be any of them. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting tournaments because I'm looking at Marquette and Xavier's teams that have really competed with St. John's and could absolutely beat them as well. But then St. John's is proving people that they don't lose, and they're a top 8 at worst team in the country right now. So I'm excited for this tournament for sure.
It's funny you say that because like St. John's, yeah, they just don't lose, but I'm waiting for that regression to hit because they're so bad scoring the ball, but they just keep squeaking out these wins because their defense is unbelievable. Like Kadari Richmond's obviously a stud, but the game winner that they had was against Marquette, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the steal that could have been, I think you tweeted it, could have been almost a foul. That was a gamble because if he's a millisecond late or he hits the offensive player, it's 2 shots for Marquette, and
arguably an awful decision.
Yeah, he got away with it and stole a win, literally stole a win. And I don't know, dude. This St. John's team is just so interesting to me, and I say that in terms of like I don't know how far they can go in March because of the lack of offense, but their defense just shows up time in, time out, and in a Big East that I feel like physicality is always there on a night in, night out basis. Like Marquette Xavier is going to be a good matchup. I mean, even if Providence beats, say Providence faces St. John's in the quarterfinals, I think that's going to be like a sneaky, pretty good half, and then carry over the second half to where St. John's will be tested. But who would you have knocking off St. John's in the Big East if there was a team to ultimately do it?
Quickly, just to remind everyone, St. John's 4 losses this year were a double overtime loss against Baylor on a buzzer beater, by 3 to Georgia, by 1 at Creighton, and by 2 at Nova. Like, them and Duke are the 2 teams that feasibly could have been undefeated this year. And you mentioned the offense, and I understand the shooting. I understand how some possessions can look, but they can score in the open floor. They're top 10 in offensive rebounding. They get to the line. They're not a great free throw shooting team, but they get to the line. And at the end of the day, the offensive talent is there. Like it doesn't, there's teams that make me want to bang my head against the wall watching them offensively. That's not what St. John's is, in my opinion. Like you obviously want them to score more. I understand how they're graded out metrically, but like RJ Lewis can hoop. Like he can create for himself. He can score. Kadari Richmond can hoop. He can create for himself. He can score. Ejiofor can do everything. Davon Smith didn't play last game. I'm not sure what his status is. I hope to have him back. Aaron Scott can get hot. And I like Wiltshire. So like the stat about the 2 teams that have made the Final Four shooting sub 32% for 3, both being Patino Louisville teams, is just insane. But it's like I don't think there's a cap to how good this team can be. But that being said, they are vulnerable. Like I think Marquette Xavier will 100% be a good game against St. John's, and I would not be surprised by that upset at all. And to be frank, another interesting thing about conference tournaments we haven't talked about yet, it's nice to win the Big East tournament, but wouldn't you rather advance the NCAA tournament if St. John's has a little bit of extra break with the way they play? Like I don't think Patino's mad about that. I think maybe per Patino's ego, like back in MSG, like they almost knocked off UConn last year. Let's not forget. And if they did, they're probably dancing. Then they turned down the NIT. So I'm not trying to say they don't care, but I just think it's a very real possibility that, Providence gives them a good game and then they lose to Marquette Xavier. And it's kind of like, all right, whatever. But they could also run the table because they are the best team in the league.
Who would you pick with these odds to win the Big East tournament? Who would your pick be to win?
You see how the team with the 6th best chance, Nova, is 15-1, and Carolina had the 4th best odds, and they were 30-1. Just kind of shows you how much more competitive this league is. From a value perspective, I don't really see value on any team outside of Nova as a total long shot. Like I think Xavier, Marquette, like I said, have a really good chance to beat St. John's. But if you're betting Xavier, Marquette to upset St. John's, you're getting them at like plus 320, or maybe not Marquette, but Xavier to beat St. John's is probably 9.5-point dogs. Like some of these, it's like, do you just do a money line rollover? Do you bet Do you bet Xavier to beat St. John's, and then do you bet them again to win in the championship? So from a futures perspective, there's other leagues which we'll get to where I think there's more value on a specific bet, if that makes sense.
I agree. I don't know the value. I would, again, Villanova is the long shot to, knock off UConn. Where is it at? Let me pull this back up. Like beat UConn, but then the semis, like I don't trust them against Creighton. Like I think Creighton's going to be clicking on all cylinders. Like we talked about, McDermott's a great coach, but value wise, I mean, God, and you have sold me on St. John's. I mean, I did pull off like St. John's. They've scored like 80 plus points in 3 of their last 6 games. So
Yeah.
for a team that has not scored, their offense isn't viewed in a positive light. I mean, you have Rick Pitino saying he wants to kill himself in post game interviews about watching his.
Hey, you kind of schemed them in that stat because they scored 79 twice.
Yeah. I was going to get to that too. But they scored 79 twice, but they scored 89 against UConn, 82 against DePaul, 86 against Marquette, and then 79 against Creighton, and 76 against Butler is what I'm seeing on Ken Palm. So, like, this team has scored in the last month of the season a lot better than they were scoring earlier in the year. So it's not like 60 to 50 barn burners they're having here. They're putting points on the board while playing their defense. And so for that reason, I think I'm taking St. John's at plus 155 in this tournament.
They should be bad. I didn't mean to to take anything away with the would they care if they lost thing. I do think Pitino back in MSG wants to. It's Pitino. He's like, we're gonna go win Big East tournament. We're gonna get a 2 seed. We're gonna go to the Final Four. That's how he and win, cut down the nets. They're thinking like that, and you can't blame them when their worst loss is by 3, like in November.